Welcome to the 30-minute hour. It's the personal development podcast for the seven-figure entrepreneur who's looking to level up and become unstoppable. I'm your host, Eric Twiggs, your procrastination prevention partner. Joining me as always, you know him as the super CEO, the business strategist extraordinaire, and all-around good guy, Ted Fells.
Happy Monday.
It is indeed a happy Monday. This is a special Monday. This is a special Monday. We have an Air Force general that is
Mm.
with us, and she's going to talk about four leadership attributes of an Air Force general. That's the theme of our show today. I mean,
Eric, Eric, have we ever had an Air Force general?
we have never had an Air Force general. This is the first.
This is a first.
This is a historic episode of the 30-minute hour. So now it's truly an honor to have her on, and we're going to go ahead and introduce her right now. Again, we're talking about the four leadership attributes of an Air Force general. So she serves as the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Contracting, the Office of the Assistant Secretary of the Air Force for Acquisition, Technology, and Logistics here in Washington, D.C. Also oversees the training, organizing, and equipping of over 9,000 contracting professionals who execute programs worth over $65 billion annually. She is somebody.
She is somebody for sure.
Absolutely. Please join me in welcoming to the 30-minute hour Major General Alice W. Trevino.
Thank you, Eric and Ted. I'm just honored to be here. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm ready to level up with you guys.
Fantastic. And once again, I just want to do this publicly. I just want to thank you for your service and your contributions to our safety and well-being. We definitely appreciate that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's an honor to serve, and for everybody who's gone before us and everybody who will go on be after us. It's just takes the whole nation. So everybody working together.
Yes, for sure.
Really.
For sure. Now, I do want to give everybody kind of the backstory perspective of how you got to this point. So I'm just curious, like what was it that motivated you to pursue a career in the Air Force?
So I grew up in Evansville, Indiana, and when I was graduating from high school, I actually did not know where I wanted to go to school. I knew I wanted to go get a degree, and I wanted to go to a higher learning, university or school, and I ended up going to the Air Force Academy. So that was in 1989 when I graduated, and I applied in 1988. And I think the biggest really impact on me were two things. One was I had done a research laboratory at Purdue University, and a fellow student, he was an upperclassman. I think he was even getting his PhD or his master's. He asked me where I was going to go to school, and I didn't know, and he pushed me and he cajoled me and he kind of put me on the spot. And so I just said, well, I want to get my degree in engineering. And he said, what kind? And I said, aeronautical engineering. And so he said, well, why don't you go to the Air Force Academy? And I had never heard about it, but I had heard of West Point, which is the Army, and the Naval Academy. And so he got me thinking about that. And then my father had been enlisted in the Air Force. He separated as a staff sergeant. And so I kind of just put two and two together. I hadn't really thought about it until this upperclassman had encouraged me in his own way to think differently. And I kind of say it was on a whim that I applied to the Air Force Academy. And luckily, I got accepted, but there was a long line of things that you have to do. And I think when I first applied, had I known all the long things that I would have had to do, there was the academics and the physical training and the medical and just, all of the documentation and getting an appointment from your state representative. I don't know if I would have done it, but I think by the time I did apply, now it was, you got to follow through. And so I followed through and stuck with it. But it was really a lot of just kind of serendipity along the way and good luck.
It's interesting you mentioned serendipity. You and I were talking backstage, even as far as how I got to this point with the podcast. And like, to me, I don't think that's a coincidence that you talk to him, he just randomly mentions this path that you're on now. So talk to us about kind of your thoughts on this whole idea of the role that luck and serendipity plays on one's success.
Yeah, I think that there's always, of course, what's the phrase, 99% inspiration and 1% perspiration. That always made me think, well, what is the inspiration? And there are certain things, no matter what you are planning to do, that you have to leave a little bit of decision space out there. And I kind of say, you're making room for serendipity. You're making room for the universe to kind of have a vote, even though you can't predict it. And you just offering that ability to have this opportunity, that one that you can't think of, that means that you are giving yourself that space for serendipity to come in. And when I look back on really everything in my Air Force career over the last 31 years, serendipity has played a lot in that. It's not, yes, definitely hard work and, doing everything that I could do, but serendipity has had a place, luck has had a place, and I think those are kind of two different things. And timing, and I'm not kidding when I say sometimes it happens because you turned left and you could have turned right, but you just turned left and you fell across somebody, or you ran into somebody, or something, you fill in the blank. And I think that's really for all of us, is just leaving that space out there for the cosmic things, the karma that could happen.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Like, I'm fascinated. I had one of my clients was attending a conference, and she went to the wrong session. Like, she wanted to go to something with leadership, and she sat in the wrong session, was about to leave, but the idea she got was the one idea she really needed, and her business is like taking off ever since.
That's perfect.
Yeah. So it kind of goes back to what you say about this whole idea of separate. Sometimes you think you're making a wrong turn, but you're really making a right turn.
Exactly.
So I'm just curious, if you could go back to that 1993 cadet version of yourself, and you could travel back in time and give her advice based off of what you know now, what advice would you give to that younger version of yourself?
So I have been asked this before, and I often come up with, it is really what I would tell her, because I've had to think about it. And sometimes when I'm answering a question, kind of off the cuff, it's just what comes to my mind. But recently I've been asked this question by a couple of friends, and I would go back and tell her 32 years ago, 36 years ago when she was at the Air Force Academy, is to be a little bit more confident in what she had to offer. Still listen to others, and I'm not saying like take up the room, but what I'm saying is be a little bit more confident and outgoing, because even though folks would probably describe me as a younger Trevino, Cadet Trevino, they probably would say I'm an extrovert, meaning outgoing, but not really in the work environment. And so I didn't really put myself out there a lot. And so I would say be more confident, because you do have good ideas. And what I've learned is we all have good ideas, but if someone isn't asking us for those and we don't say them, they're not being shared. And I was really, the Cadet Trevino, the Lieutenant Trevino of 32 years ago would not probably be on this podcast. She was very nervous. She was not very good at public speaking. She did not and was not able to talk off the cuff. She didn't have a lot to share. I think she was thinking a lot, but I think I would offer that if I could go back and talk to her, I would say, just practice a little bit more, put yourself out there a little bit more, get uncomfortable, stop trying to find the perfect, place or speaking engagement, because practice really does help. I've gotten more comfortable with speaking in public and more comfortable with being able to, describe something or engage with Ted and Eric that the lieutenant would never have been able to do. She may have shied away. She probably wouldn't have even shown up.
No, oftentimes you just have to be put in those situations where, like you said, where you're uncomfortable, and where so you've been throughout your career, I'm sure, in places where you had to speak, right? That you were a keynote speaker, like you had no choice but to be that that person. That back then we probably always, you may have been able to think that, oh, not me, I can just kind of stay toward the back. You didn't see that was a place for you, but now you're in that seat and you have no choice but to spread your wings there.
Yes. And I think it's like it's easy being a wallflower or hanging out on the wall, but in some point it's like everybody turns to the left, turns to the right, and it's like, oh, it's you.
It's funny. That's something I have to deal with oftentimes with some of my staff, where we'll have virtual meetings, and there's some people that just tend to just be a square, like they never say anything until I have that meeting, and they're the only square, and then they're forced to say something. They're forced to think on their toes. So you just got to be put in that situation at times.
Is it uncomfortable situations? That's where the point of growth happens most exponentially.
Absolutely.
Totally agree. Which you say something. I've heard you say something in one of your speeches. You said that you should really focus on expanding your comfort zone versus getting outside of the comfort zone.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about that.
Well, everybody hears get outside of your comfort zone, but to me, it implies you get out, but you're going to go back in. And when you expand your comfort zone, what before wasn't comfortable now becomes comfortable. So you can't go back. And for your listeners, I describe it in this way. The easiest way is something we all have in common. Like, say we were in high school, we got the agenda on the first day, and the teacher says, this is where we're going to study this semester. And nobody, at least not me, I never looked at that agenda and went, oh yeah, I got this. I usually was like, oh my gosh, I think I'm in the wrong class. No way. Right. And they break it down, they chunk the information. And at the end, you take your test, whatever the final is, you do your final paper, and there's more to learn, but not on that topic. You've learned it, and now you're ready to move on. And if we, at the beginning of the next semester, said, now we're going to take that class again, on average, 90% of the people would be bored, and you wouldn't want to repeat it because you've learned everything. There wasn't a lot new to learn, and so you were wasting your time, or there's other things to do. I mean, that's kind of like what, I'm being facetious about what it is, but that's kind of what this expansion of the comfort zone, it's the same thing. And in the Air Force, I tell lieutenants and captains and majors, I share that, at the beginning of an assignment, it's the same thing. At the beginning of any job, any position, any assignment, even outside of the Air Force, and that first day, you are anxious. It's a good anxiety, but you do not know the people that you work with. You may not even know your job responsibilities. You're there to learn. But then after you fill in the blank on whatever that time that is, in the Air Force, it's 2 to 4 years, you go to the next assignment. If they made you repeat the same assignment, again, you'd be bored. You've grown, and now you're ready to get uncomfortable again, and you just keep expanding your comfort zone. And nobody wants to be comfortable, really, if they want to grow. If you are comfortable, that means you're probably not growing, or you're taking a breather, and now then expand your comfort zone. Don't be stagnant, and then grow again.
Excellent. Just excellent points. I think that's something, we do this segment at the end. It's called Write This Down. I'm going to say it right now. You need to write that down. Expand your comfort zone versus getting outside of the comfort zone. I think that's a great point. Okay. So at what point in your journey did you say, you know what? Maybe you had a vision board. I don't know. You said, you know what? I'm going to be a general. I think I can make it to the top. At what point did that become a realistic vision for you?
So we were talking about this backstage, weren't we, Eric? This was never a goal of mine. It never. I know it may be hard for some listeners to believe as you go across your trajectory. There's certain promotion milestones that you have to go across, and in the Air Force, some people say it's up or out, and so you have to keep getting promoted, or you're out, or you can continue to serve, but you're not going to have another promotion. And I never really had a goal of becoming a general officer, but I did have goals of learning, growing, and investing in others. I've said this to other people. I've said this to my husband. My best talent, not my only talent, but my best talent is finding talent in others. I'm very good at it. And then I cultivate that talent. So for me, kind of thinking through my leadership journey was more about who else can I help? How can I give back? Am I still growing? And along the way, I set myself up for promotion, but it was never the goal. It was more of, again, I would akin it to serendipity again. Is being in the right place, doing the best that I could, performing, taking advantage of opportunities that came across my path, and allowing others to grow along that journey with me. So maybe I'm different. Some people do have a goal to make a general officer, but I was not one of those.
Yeah, you know what? You just seem like such a nice general. Are you always just this nice? Seems like such a nice general. Someone nice just really to work for and work under. I mean,
I hope so. I mean, I think I've had tough conversations. We have to have tough conversations. I'm sure at the other end of those tough conversations, some people didn't feel that I was being nice, but have you heard like nice versus kind? I think I'm kind because I'm transparent and I'm honest, and I don't like being not transparent. I actually get uncomfortable if I'm not transparent. That is something I've had to make sure that I don't struggle with, because if I am not helping the team and fully, transparent, but being honest and truthful and telling them why something has to happen, I am in a bad position. Like, I'm distracted because I'm not being transparent. So, but help hold people accountable, and then hold them accountable to what you shared. Not like new things, not like, oh, did I not tell you I was going to expect that from you yesterday? Well, now you're in trouble.
Right.
It's communication and helping people, and it's not about being liked. It's about being kind and helping people, again, grow, because you're investing in them, and that gives me the greatest pleasure at all.
Yeah, I echo Ted's comments, and I think when you have that approach, people don't want to let you down. So it's almost like they feel like if they don't follow through, that they're letting you down, because you're being so transparent and you come across with authenticity. What are your thoughts on that?
I often try to make people want to do what I need them to do.
And
right?
make them that it's their idea, and that's
Yep.
the best.
That's right. That's right. Get them invested in it. Absolutely.
For sure. So how did the role of general, how did it compare to what you thought it would when you were kind of on the outside of it looking in? Like how did the reality of being in your position compare to what you thought it would be?
So when I was younger, as a lieutenant and a captain, I don't think I ever even met a general officer. Maybe until I was a more senior captain. So I had been in quite a few years, at least more than 5 years, and they were really scary to me. General officers, you again, probably, talking back to Lieutenant Trevino, like, speak up, be more confident. I was probably cowering in the corner if a general officer came in, because maybe to me they weren't as approachable.
Mm.
And that, I think, that impacted me. So I want to be approachable, because I think that's where you find out things that you need to know, and people then feel comfortable telling you about them, because they know that you're not going to kill the messenger, and you need to know. And I did not realize when I became a general officer that that was one of the most important things. So again,
Mm.
it's not about rank, but it does give you access to meetings. And that access is, again, not about you, the person. You could take my face out and you could take my name out, but Major General blank needs to be in the room to give her people access or share their information to tell the story. But I am just representing them. So that, I think, was the biggest thing that I had to come to grips with, is, it's never about you to begin with, but the whole point is, now you do have entry to a room that you didn't have entry before. And so how are you going to help your people? Whether or not it's elevating something that needed to be elevated, that other people weren't listening to before, that someone's telling you something that the whole, in our case, Department of the Air Force contracting, we all need to know. And again, maybe have that tough conversation, but somebody's telling you that, and before maybe they were silent. So I think that was the biggest reflection and really recognition that doubling down, it's not about you, it's about what are you doing to help your people. And general officers, we have to do that. And it's a gift. We get to do it. We don't have to, we get to do it.
Yeah, and I just think that applies to if you're leading a company, right? I think that's your priority, and I think, I mean, I think that's something Ted is great at as well. But no, I think that's just amazing perspective to hear. So let's get into these four attributes. This is something that you talk about, and really, I just thought that's another. There's a lot to write down. Like your pen is going to run out of ink. Those of you that are listening and watching after this episode, with all the things that the general is sharing. But yeah, please share the four leadership attributes that you talk about.
So the leadership attributes that I talk to, and I kind of also liken them to characteristics of change agents. So if you're a change agent and you consider yourself an agent of change, you see a need, you want to shore it up, or there's a gap and you want to change the future, these are things that can get you started. And it's 2 P's and 2 C's. And it's patience, positivity, curiosity, and courage. And I can talk about each of those individually, but in this kind of forum, I'll just go at a very, very high level, because to me, they're also intertwined. And if you have anything that you want to change, or if you're leading a change in that leadership role, the first one is positivity. And you have to be positive that the change that you're trying to influence, it's going to be different. But if when you're dealing with differences or the unknown, there's the fear of the unknown. And so you have to be positive about the change. Otherwise, why would you be doing it? And that goes with helping people understand the why. But you have to be positive, because it's so easy to get negative. I mean, when you, I don't know if you've, I can't remember who the author was, but it was like he had a formula. It's it's 7 to 11 positive aspects, but it's like 1 to 3 negative, and you're already in the negative. And so then to get out of that hole, to get out of the negative, you got to find 9 to 11, and it takes more and more and more. And so just kind of staying in the positive and being able to recognize if you're not being positive. And I'm not saying like sprinkling pixie dust and everything's rosy and we wear rose colored glasses. It's realizing that you can lead people through that change, no matter the hardship, no matter the effort that's going to go through, no matter the time, if it's not going to be instantaneous. And it's just that positivity. The patience, again, I just said it. It's like, how long is it going to take? We don't know. So you have to be patient. If it's a good idea, stick with it. Sometimes it doesn't resonate with the first person. Sometimes that persistence really helps pay off, but the patience to help everybody get on board and understand the why and make sure that you're going in the same direction, and then answering the same questions over and over again. My husband Ray, he laughs at me because sometimes I do say, and he's right, and I have really tried to work on it too, is he'll ask me a question and I'll be like, snap back at him, like, I already told you. Well, I need to be patient, because the fact that I snapped at him and said, I already told you, he's not going to say the outcome of that, and the response is never, and nor has it ever been, oh, darling Allie, you're so right. Thank you for reminding me of that time you told me last week. Now I have gone back into my memory bank and I am better off for it. That's not the outcome. Instead, he's angry at me for snapping at him. I look foolish for snapping at him. I could have just answered the question. And so it's like learning to be a little bit more patient. We're not perfect. Again, we're humans, but that patience really does pay off. And the curiosity is just asking questions. Why does it happen this way? What don't I know? Like I have been asked before why we do something a certain way, and I've actually been able to tell them the why. And that curiosity then helped me shore up their educational gap or offered a learning opportunity, because again, they had the courage to ask, but their curiosity, if I wasn't patient and positive about my answer, the opposite is going to happen, right? They're never going to come back to me and ask a question. They didn't learn anything. I'm, again, feel foolish for making them feel bad. And now maybe I'm not somebody they're going to come back to. And so that's the piece of the curiosity piece. And we have to be curious too. Like, we have to ask, why is it done that way? Why am I doing it the same way all the time? Why, if I look over at somebody and they're doing it better and I'm wasting my time, say, artificial intelligence is big right now, right? Somebody is getting through cultivating a whole bunch of culling a bunch of information in 30 seconds, and it's taking me 3 days. Why am I not asking how I can do this better? And that courage is really, when you see something that needs to be changed, you need to fix it for your personnel. Are you going to have the courage to ask for the resources? Are you going to have the courage to put time behind it? Are you going to have the courage to say something and allow other people to have the courage if they're not feeling, if they're not necessarily like feeling bad about something, but if they're not asking for something and you can see that they need to, then you can help be their voice. And so having the courage to speak for other people and give them the credit for it. But the whole point was to move that conversation forward. And that takes all of those, again, they're so intertwined to me.
Yeah, that's this is great. So here's my thought, just based off of these 4 you shared. If you look at somebody who's a high performer or they're a really successful entrepreneur, quite often patience can be a big challenge, just because you want results yesterday. You expect when you put your foot on the gas that the car is going to move forward instantly. Do you find patience to be the biggest challenge? Or what do you see out of the four that's the big challenge?
I think the patience one is my biggest challenge. I'm very curious. I ask a lot of questions. I'm not going to say I'm the most courageous person in the room, but my favorite quote is by um, John Wayne. Courage is being scared to death, but saddling up anyway. And I always think it's like decisions are made by those who show up. So I know I'm not going to be perfect, but I'm not afraid to saddle up and get dirty. And positivity, as Ted said, it comes natural to me. I'm a very positive person. I love for people to be positive. I like to help them understand the why behind it so that we can move forward together. But I am an impatient person, and I have worked very hard to be patient. Again, I fail at it miserably every single day, but I get up tomorrow and I try again. And it's that those glimmers, right? Those glimmers that if you're not listening, you'll miss them. And so that reminds me, because I'm sure I've missed things. We all have. But if I can do it over and I'm just silent for one more second or allow space for somebody else to say something, that patience, actually, the return on investment of me being patient will often outweigh my impatience. And so it's a struggle, but it's something that I try to work at because I know I'm not a perfect patient person.
So General, I have a question. This is kind of a different topic. If you had an opportunity to be in another career right now, like what would it be?
So
It could be it could be
yeah,
anything. It could be if you say I'd like to be a singer. I mean, whatever it is. I mean, what would it be?
so dreaming, I guess the if I could do anything, well, I'm pretty happy with what I'm doing.
Sure.
So if I wasn't, I was like, what would I be doing if I wasn't doing this? And it's hard to take yourself out of that. But the things, have you heard of the principle of ikigai? It's a
No.
Japanese phrase. It's Ikigai, ikigai, and it's finding your passion. It's what you're passionate about. It's really our lives are about finding our why and what is our passion. And so if I wasn't in the United States Air Force, what am I passionate about? And I'm passionate about helping others. I really believe in the way, to kind of like navigate through life is through leadership and education. And I think those two things go hand in hand. So I'm very passionate about that. My guilty pleasures are I love hats. I love hats. Now I have to wear a hat in the military, but I can't wait for like the Kentucky Derby to wear my Kentucky Derby hats. I also am kind of allergic to the sun. And so I love hats because they keep the sun off my face. And so I have visors of every color and I love color. And so maybe I would be a fashionista. I don't know, on the weekends, a little bit more hats, a little bit more color.
Okay.
Monday through Friday, I'm, in a uniform, but I'm only 5'2", so I'd have to be a petite fashionista.
No, that's cool. Okay.
But
Wow.
passionate about hats, color, people, leadership. Those are things. Also during COVID, we started be like amateur bird watchers. Are you guys bird watchers? I love watching birds. I don't know why. I think it goes back to the patience piece. You can watch them and just kind of get away from your whatever's going on the day to day. Just watching birds do their thing is kind of fascinating. Yeah. So I'm an amateur bird watcher. But I don't know if you could combine all of those things.
No, it's cool though. Yeah. No,
No,
it's interesting, whenever I talk to people, as an entrepreneur, and they're like, aren't you ready to give this up yet? Aren't you ready to? And I'm like, no, I love what I do. right? Like, I mean, what else would I do? Like, if you asked me that question, I'd probably be doing something where I'm still kind of doing leadership, you know, and
Yeah.
leading something, right? So,
Yep.
yeah,
It's funny, right? It's not something different. It's something of the same, but maybe in a different space.
that's right. That's right. I don't know about the, you know, hats and stuff for me. You know, that may not be a thing for me in the fashion thing, but who knows?
Ted, I think you should give it a try.
Yeah, give it a try, right?
You got to expand your comfort zone, Ted. We talked
There
about
you
that
go.
earlier.
There you go.
There's
Yeah.
There
so
you go.
many hats. There's a great hat shop in Annapolis, Maryland, Hats in the Belfry. And you could just go in there and try on every single hat. And I bet you you'd find one. And I am not associated with them at all. We like literally ran into them this summer. And I ended up getting my hat for the Kentucky Derby.
Nice.
Wow. Okay. Well, good
There's
stuff. So
serendipity again, Eric.
there you go. Yeah, I think we just helped Ted. You know, he's gonna get some more hats there. So,
That's
so,
right.
so one of your favorite songs is titled "Grateful." So, please share what your perspective is on gratitude.
Yeah, so that and the Grateful I was sharing the singer is a band and it's Call Me Stevie Ray and Connor Price because there's a lot of songs out there that are called Grateful or have Grateful in it. So that's the one I like, Call Me Stevie Ray and Connor Price. And it is very upbeat and it's kind of like every morning I wake up and before I go brush my teeth or before I even eat breakfast, I count my blessings. I count and identify and put words into the things that I'm grateful for. And it really is true. Gratitude begets gratitude. It shapes your whole day. It like you start out on a positive note and you know it usually can grow or it can go downhill, but if you start out being grateful, it's going to grow in my estimation. So not always again perfect, but I sense that gratitude attitude pays off. And so I've made it my alarm clock, so it's the song that wakes me up, and it's a song that I listen to before I brush my teeth. And it's it's a funny song too, because it's like when you hear a song and it resonates with you and you're like, I do that, I do that too. And that is one of these songs. So I'm a very spiritual person, not really religious, but the spirit of gratitude is something that I think can benefit all of us. And I really like to count my blessings and identify the things I'm grateful for, because it's so easy to just move beyond them and not, give them the weight that's due.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think I always say to people, it's impossible to feel blessed and stressed at the exact same time. You know, if you really focus on what you're grateful for, I mean, you start feeling better. Well, good. No, that's great. So, like we said at the beginning, you currently lead 9,000 people in over 90 locations. And, we're coming to that time of year when people are really starting to think more strategically, right? We're coming on 2025. It's a new year. So from your perspective, what advice do you have to that business leader who's looking to create a strategic plan?
So I think that the advice that I would go with today would be kind of some of the themes that we've talked about today. And Ted brought it up, like, what would you do if you weren't doing this? What are your dreams? And start with that. And then I would say your dreams can only be achieved if you have a plan to meet them. And so identify a couple of goals to meet with those. And then otherwise it will stay a dream, right? You'll just be dreaming about it and it'll never come to fruition. So if you know your dreams and you have the plan to get there, and you leave some space for the serendipity and the karma and the good things that you can't even envision yet, I would say that is enough flexibility to allow the universe to kind of come in. And so the dreams and where opportunities intersect with those dreams come with a plan. And if you don't have a specific plan, then kind of lay out just at least some mini goals to get there. Because a lot of people aren't that strategic, but they can kind of think in terms of 1 to 2 weeks and then move it beyond, 3 to 6 months. And then a long-term strategy is anything over 5 years. And then the last thing I would say is that I speak, because I'm in the military, we speak in terms in our planning is like branches and sequels. And that's why I would say you leave that space out there for those branches and sequels, because you think you might want to go down one branch, but it could lead to another sequel, or you can go back up and kind of like, do a U-turn and take a new branch, and that's going to lead to sequels that you haven't even envisioned. And those are kind of the things that I've learned. It's, the next chapter is not written, but you can do a lot to set yourself up for that chapter. And that's kind of advice I would have for your listeners.
Oh, I just think that's great advice. I do think sometimes people obsess too much over the how, right? And I think that's what, because they can't figure out in their mind, okay, how, as opposed to really focusing on the what. You want to have a plan, but you do, like you said, you need to leave room for kind of serendipity, for that chance meeting. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, I mean, you turning left versus when you should have turned right and not even knowing what's to say that's wrong.
Yeah.
And I have found myself in places that I didn't expect to be in, been able to expand my network and meet people that I didn't know yesterday. And some of those outcomes on just those new relationships have brought me more joy or more opportunity than, again, what I could have envisioned beforehand. And so that chance meeting or that chance encounter, or just that, chance of, even missing like a bus or your metro train. It's kind of, then what do you do next? And so instead of being negative that this thing happened, how about we be positive? And I was sharing with Eric earlier, I said some of my, my some of the best lessons that I've had in life were from maybe bad leaders, but they taught me what kind of leadership and leader I didn't want to be. And I'm actually very grateful to have those lessons or occurrences in my life. That the ups and downs have given me perspective, and I wouldn't be who I was without them. I would, of all the trials and tribulations, when you come out on the other side, that's where you grow. But you can't even, if you want perfection, I'm not sure life would be as interesting.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I'm grateful. Of course, I don't like it at the time, right? But it's that hindsight. It does give you clarity. It gives you that 20/20 vision. And instead of trying to make everything perfect, it's go with the flow, be a little bit more patient, and see that some of the bad things that happen in your life they really turn out to be really good things. And they help you when other bad things come across your desk or across your doorstep, to help somebody else through them, because you have been through them. So I do not regret any of the bad things that have happened. I've learned from them or grown from them, every single one of them. Didn't like them that they happened at the time, but
Yeah.
No, that's excellent. So, what role has mentors and mentorship? What role has that played in your success?
So I think mentors can be formal or informal. And I've had a lot of informal mentors, not really formal mentors, but now I get to be a mentor to others. And that is something I take very seriously. And I take it so seriously that I want to make sure that we have that relationship and it's focused on the mentee. So they kind of bring to the table what are their goals. And I really break it down as like, I will ask them, what are your short, medium, and long-term goals? And people have all kinds of things where they answer that. And that's our first conversation. I have them fill out a questionnaire. I ask them about their strengths and opportunities for improvement. And then I ask them their goals, professional and personal. And then on the next time that we talk, I ask them, okay, of those goals that you have, which one do you want to concentrate on? Which one is a priority for you? And they can pick. So they kind of set the agenda, but I try to help them work through that so that they have ownership, but I'm there along the way to help mentor and guide them. And again, I'm not perfect, and I also seek them to find other mentors because I don't want anybody to just ever have one mentor. I want them to, again, expand their mentoring network. But mentoring and helping and sharing are things that I think as leaders we have a responsibility to do. So I do take it very seriously, and I love to meet with folks. Even if it's one, then it's one. If they want to get back together in 3 or 4 months and tell me how they're doing, we will do that too.
All right. And it's never anybody we have on this show that's just achieved a high level of success. Having mentors has always played a big role. And that's always been a key. So I definitely wanted to make sure we touched on that. So now, General Trevino, this is Ted's favorite part of the show that we're about to come to. It's called Write This Down. He can't wait until we get this part started. So this is where I teased it at the beginning. We each go around and talk about at least one idea from today's episode that the people need to write down so they can level up. So General Trevino, I'll throw it to you. You're our guest of honor. What do the people need to write down from today?
So I would ask them, so in the spirit of patience, because I am not a patient person, but I am working on it. So I'm working on it every day. But one thing that helps me, again, be a better, more patient person, human being, is the space that happens when you're listening to others.
Mm.
And so what I would ask your listeners to do is to be patient. And then when someone shares something with them, to listen and maybe to suspend disbelief. Like, you don't have to automatically believe what they said or agree with them. But if you suspend disbelief for a little bit and still take it in, you can then, when you do reflect back, sometimes the answer is no. We automatically will not believe when someone's telling us something. You're wrong, you don't like me, you said that. But when we suspend disbelief, we allow that space, again, for growth to happen. And they might be telling us a truth we do need to know. And by suspending disbelief for just a little bit, we may come out even better off. So that was kind of what came to my mind.
That is powerful. That is because like if you're getting, let's say, some constructive feedback, right? It says your natural reaction is like, oh, that's not true. Nope, that's not true. So from what you're saying is that you have to suspend that disbelief for a moment and consider maybe it is.
Yeah. And it's hard to do, but on average, there's probably a grain of truth in it. And then when there isn't a grain of truth, you've at least listened, and it's going to make you think or be a little bit more thoughtful about it. And it's kind of like, it's not about proving them wrong. It's about wonder why they're saying this and where is the constructive piece that I can take out of it. And then you just launch from there.
Oh, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. Suspend disbelief. Write that down. All right, Ted.
Yeah, the general is a tough act to follow, Eric. This is why, General, I don't like this, because I always have to be the one to follow the guest who says all this amazing stuff, and then Eric gets time to make notes. See, I'm giving Eric some time to kind of get his stuff together. You said so many things today. I have a mentor. His name is Chief Tim Dickens, retired Air Force. Amazing leader. You may have come in contact with him over the years, but he says something to me, and over the years as an entrepreneur, he says, Ted, as a leader, you only can have like 3 type of days, and it kind of tied to something I think you said earlier. And he was like, yeah, you can only be like, it's got to be like good, excellent, or phenomenal. like it's got to be something like that. Like as a leader, that's got to be it. And it's just like, man, but so now it's like, people are like, how you doing? I'm good. I'm great. Right. I'm excellent. Everything is phenomenal. It's just an amazing day. Like you control, it doesn't mean everything is going well, but I think you kind of control like that positivity that you spoke about earlier and how you go about things. And then, the people, and especially in like your position with so many people that are kind of looking up to you and like you just can't come in and be like, oh, the day sucks. Like you can't do that, right? Like you gotta be like, oh yeah, it's great, it's amazing. We're gonna tackle all these things today, and you gotta have that energy. You gotta be turned up, and yeah, as a leader, I just think that you have to, that's something he shared with me. And I always remember I said, it's got to be like good, great, excellent, phenomenal, something. I have to be able to come with that positivity. Also, as you talked about, just gratitude, right? Like, I mean, just, how you start your day and the energy and all that you give to that. Again, I mean, because there's so many amazing things like, several years ago, when we talked about that, younger version of yourself, to think that someone said, one day you're going to be a general. Like, probably wouldn't have even thought of that being a possibility. And then to be in that place now and to be like, man, like, wow, like at some point you probably had to be like, maybe in that room when you're by yourself, you're like, yeah, I kind of did that, and I just think that gratitude, and sometimes I guess people say to stop and smell the roses sometime at where you are and the things that you've accomplished, because so many people can be looking at you and be like, man, I wish I was where you are or where Eric is or something. So yeah, it's my thoughts on that.
Absolutely. All right. Make sure you write that down. So my contribution, and again, there's so many things I could choose from based off of what was shared, but just the idea of just staying open, and just kind of leaving room for serendipity. You don't have to have it all figured out. My saying, you don't allow perfect to become the enemy of progress, right? It doesn't have to be perfect. You just never know. I've gotten opportunities because I was having a chance conversation with somebody, and they mentioned, oh, so you're trying to do this? Oh, I have a friend of mine who coaches that, and I end up bringing this person on as a coach. And so I just think you just have to stay open, and not be so tied to the outcome that, it can only happen this way, or, I don't know how I can make it happen because I don't have this or that. So I think that the things we were talking about as it relates to serendipity, you just kind of have to leave room that you'll have that chance encounter, or you'll get that idea, or you'll listen to a podcast like this that can help you to get there. So write that down.
I love it.
All right. Also, for those of you watching and listening, don't forget to share the show.
Share the show.
Yeah, I truly believe this was like a leadership masterclass. I mean, there's not too many days where someone who leads 9,000 people is going to tell you, hey, here's my philosophy. Here's what I'm doing. I mean, that is such a rare opportunity. So hopefully you go back, you listen, take great notes, and more importantly, go back and apply everything that you've heard. So General Trevino, thank you again for being our guest, and thank you for sharing everything that you shared with our audience today.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Ted.
Thank you so much.
Yes. This has been a fantastic episode. And again, for those of you listening and watching, don't forget to go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, any of those podcasting platforms, and make sure you hit that subscribe button so that way you never miss a future episode. That's it for this week's episode of the 30-Minute Hour. And until next time, have a great one.